Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the Earth Defense Station, watching the last civilian transport disappear into the darkness of space. The blue marble below her seemed so peaceful, so fragile. She couldn't believe that in just 72 hours, everything would change forever. "Commander, we're receiving another transmission from the Galactic Council," Lieutenant Rodriguez called from the communications station. Sarah sighed. The same message they'd been sending for weeks now: surrender or face annihilation. The Galactic Council, a collection of 12 advanced alien species, had given humanity an ultimatum: join their collective as a servant race or be wiped from existence. "Put it through," Sarah said, straightening her uniform. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the familiar form of Ambassador Zexai, a tall, insectoid creature with 4 arms and compound eyes that gleamed like black diamonds. His translator collar converted his clicking sounds into cold, mechanical words. "Humans of Earth," Zexai began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "This is your final warning. You have 24 Earth hours to surrender your weapons, dismantle your military, and submit to Council rule. Your species will be relocated to designated farming worlds where you will serve the greater galactic community. Refuse and face complete extinction." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. "Same threat, different day," muttered Chief Engineer Martinez from his station. "Do they really think we're going to roll over and become space farmers?" Sarah looked around at her crew. These weren't just soldiers. They were teachers, engineers, doctors, and scientists who had volunteered to defend their home. Earth's military wasn't the largest in the galaxy, but it was filled with people who refused to give up. "Status report," Sarah ordered. "All civilian evacuations are complete," reported Lieutenant Kim. "Defense platforms are fully operational. The Luna base is ready, and Mars colony is on high alert." "What about the other colonies?" "Titan Station, Europa Outpost, and the asteroid mining facilities are all prepared for siege protocols. Admiral Harrison sends word that the fleet is in position." Sarah nodded. Humanity had spread across the solar system over the past century, building cities on Mars, mining operations in the asteroid belt, and research stations throughout the outer planets. They weren't just defending Earth anymore, they were protecting an entire civilization. "And our new weapon systems?" Sarah asked quietly. Martinez grinned. "Ready for field testing, Commander, though I still think the Council is going to get a bigger surprise than they're expecting." The past months had been busy ones for humanity. When the Council first made contact and delivered their ultimatum, most human leaders assumed it was either a joke or a test. Humanity had been searching for alien life for centuries, and the first contact they finally made was with a group demanding their surrender. But the demonstrations that followed proved the Council was deadly serious. They had destroyed an unmanned space station with a single beam of light from one of their ships. The energy readings were unlike anything human science had ever seen. Each Council ship appeared to be the size of a small city, and their preliminary scans showed they had hundreds of them. The Council represented 12 different species, each more advanced than humanity in different ways. The Vorthak were master engineers who built ships that could travel between stars in days rather than years. The Zelari were telepathic beings who could coordinate attacks across vast distances without any communication delays. The Kethmer were living weapons, standing 9 feet tall with natural armor that could deflect most energy weapons. For months, human governments had debated whether resistance was even possible. Some advocated for surrender, arguing that survival was more important than freedom. Others pushed for negotiation, hoping to find some middle ground. But as more intelligence came in about how the Council treated servant races, the debate ended. Species that submitted were broken apart, their families separated, their cultures destroyed. They were used as laborers, soldiers, and worse. Humanity would rather fight and die free than live as slaves. The decision to resist had unified Earth in a way nothing else ever had. Old enemies became allies. Resources and knowledge were shared freely. Scientists who had spent decades working on separate projects suddenly found themselves collaborating on humanity's greatest challenge. "Commander," Rodriguez called urgently, "we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the solar system, multiple contacts moving fast." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. "How many?" "Initial count shows 57 ships, each roughly 3 kilometers in length. They'll reach Earth's orbit in approximately 18 hours. The bridge fell silent. 57 ships. Intelligence had suggested the Council would send a small force to make an example of humanity. Instead, they were bringing enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. "Send word to all stations and colonies," Sarah ordered. "The Council fleet has arrived. Execute Defense Protocol Omega." Across the solar system, the message spread like wildfire. On Mars, General Morrison activated the planetary defense grid that had been hidden beneath the planet's surface for months. In the asteroid belt, mining platforms suddenly revealed their true purpose as they transformed into weapons platforms. On Luna Base, scientists made final preparations for humanity's most desperate gambit. Sarah walked to her private office adjacent to the bridge and activated a secure channel to Earth's surface. The face of President Williams appeared on screen, looking older than his 60 years. "It's starting, isn't it?" he asked. "Yes, sir. 57 ships, bigger than anything we expected. We're about to find out if all our preparation was enough." The president nodded grimly. "Sarah, I want you to know that whatever happens in the next few days, humanity will remember that you and your people stood between Earth and extinction. History will honor your sacrifice." "With respect, sir, we're not planning to become history just yet." For the first time in weeks, Williams smiled. "That's what I was hoping you'd say. Give them hell, Commander." The transmission ended, and Sarah returned to the bridge. Her crew was working with quiet efficiency, each person focused on their task. The weight of humanity's future rested on their shoulders, but none of them seemed ready to buckle. "Tactical analysis?" Sarah asked. Lieutenant Commander Patel pulled up a holographic display showing the incoming fleet. Based on their formation and approach vector, they're planning a direct assault on Earth. No attempts at negotiation or demonstration of force. They intend to end this quickly. Energy readings. Each ship is generating power levels equivalent to a small star. Their weapons appear to be based on directed antimatter streams. One direct hit would destroy any of our conventional ships or stations. Sarah studied the display. The Council ships looked like massive cathedrals made of metal and crystal, beautiful in their own way but radiating menace. Each one was a masterwork of engineering that represented thousands of years of technological advancement. "What they don't know," Martinez said quietly, "is that we've had our own technological breakthrough." Sarah nodded. The past 6 months hadn't been spent just building weapons and fortifications. Human scientists had made a discovery that changed everything they thought they knew about physics. It started with Dr. Elena Vasquez, a theoretical physicist working on Earth's first faster-than-light drive. While studying the quantum foam that existed in empty space, Dr. Vasquez had discovered something remarkable. The universe wasn't just filled with matter and energy, it was alive with possibilities. Every quantum interaction created tiny ripples in spacetime, and these ripples could be amplified and directed. Humanity called it zero-point manipulation, and it was their secret weapon. "Status on the ZPM array?" Sarah asked. "All stations report ready," replied Chief Martinez. "We've got manipulators installed on every major platform, ship, and base in the system. The network is synchronized and waiting for your command." The zero-point manipulators were humanity's answer to the Council's overwhelming technological advantage. Instead of trying to build bigger guns or stronger shields, human engineers had found a way to tap directly into the fundamental forces that held the universe together. 15 hours until contact," announced Rodriguez. Sarah took a deep breath. Around the solar system, millions of humans were preparing for the fight of their lives. Children who had been evacuated to the outer colonies sent messages of support to their parents and siblings serving in the defense forces. Engineers made final adjustments to weapons that had never been tested in actual combat. Soldiers checked their equipment one last time, knowing that this might be their last day alive. But there was no despair, no panic. Humanity had always been at its best when facing impossible odds. From the first humans who left Africa to explore an unknown world, to the pioneers who crossed dangerous oceans to find new continents, to the astronauts who risked everything to reach for the stars, humans had never backed down from a challenge. "Commander," Kim called from her station, "we're receiving a message from Admiral Harrison aboard the flagship Defiance. The fleet is requesting permission to begin the opening phase." Granted, tell the Admiral that Earth is counting on him. High above the planet, Admiral Jack Harrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, humanity's most advanced warship. At 800 meters long, it was tiny compared to the Council ships approaching the solar system, but it represented the best of human engineering and determination. "All ships, this is Admiral Harrison," he broadcast to the 57 ships of Earth's defense fleet. "In a few hours, we're going to face an enemy that considers us primitives. They think we'll break and run at the first sign of their power. They don't understand that humans have been fighting against impossible odds since we first learned to stand upright." He paused, looking out at the stars that had called to humanity for so long. "Today, we show them why humans don't surrender. We show them why we've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and every other disaster this universe has thrown at us. We fight not just for Earth, but for the right of every species to choose their own destiny. Let's remind the galaxy that humans don't make good slaves." Across the fleet, thousands of voices responded with a single word: "Aye." The die was cast. In less than 15 hours, the most important battle in human history would begin. The Council expected to find a primitive species ready to submit to their superior technology and firepower. Instead, they would discover that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their new physics-defying technology. It was their absolute refusal to give up. As Sarah watched the stars through the observation deck, she thought about all the generations that had come before, all the people who had fought and died to bring humanity to this moment. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn why humans had earned the right to walk among the stars. The Council was about to discover that humanity's march to war would reveal why even the stars themselves should shake in fear. Admiral Harrison felt the familiar weight of command settling on his shoulders as the Council fleet approached the outer solar system. 12 hours had passed since their arrival, and every minute brought them closer to the moment when human determination would meet alien superiority. "Contact in 6 hours, Admiral," reported Captain Myers from the tactical station. "Long-range sensors show they're maintaining formation. No scouts, no advance parties. They're coming straight for Earth like they own the place." Harrison nodded grimly. The Council's confidence was both a blessing and a curse. Their arrogance meant they weren't expecting serious resistance, but it also meant they had brought enough firepower to reduce Earth to cosmic dust without breaking a sweat. "Signal from Luna Base, sir," announced Communications Officer Park. "Dr. Vasquez reports that the zero-point manipulation array is fully operational. All primary and secondary nodes are online and synchronized." "Good, send word to all ships, final systems check. I want every weapon, every shield, every engine running at peak efficiency. We're only going to get one shot at this." As his crew carried out their orders, Harrison walked to the forward observation deck. The view should have been peaceful, stars scattered across the infinite darkness like diamonds on black velvet. Instead, he could see the approaching Council fleet as tiny points of light growing steadily brighter. His communication device chimed with an incoming message from Earth's surface. President Williams appeared on the screen, but this time he wasn't alone. The leaders of every major nation stood behind him in the emergency bunker beneath Geneva. "Admiral," Williams began, "on behalf of every human being alive, I want to thank you and your people for what you're about to do. Win or lose, you're giving our species a chance to die on our feet instead of living on our knees." Harrison looked at the faces behind the president, men and women who had spent their entire careers dealing with earthbound problems, now united in the face of an enemy from the stars. "Mr. President, with respect, we're not planning to die today. We're planning to show the galaxy that humans don't make good victims." The transmission ended just as alarms began sounding throughout the ship. "Admiral," called Captain Myers urgently, "the Council fleet is accelerating. They'll reach Mars orbit in 3 hours, Earth orbit in 4. "They're eager to get this over with," muttered Harrison. "Fine, let's give them what they came for. Signal all ships, execute formation Charlie. It's time to remind these aliens that humans wrote the book on warfare." The human fleet began moving into position. 57 ships against 57 ships. The numbers seemed almost fair until you considered that each Council ship was the size of a small city, while the largest human vessel was barely 800 meters long. It was like watching ants prepare to fight elephants. But Admiral Harrison had learned something important during his 40 years of military service. Size wasn't everything in a fight. Speed, tactics, and the will to keep fighting when everything seemed hopeless. Those were the things that won battles. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Torres from the science station, "we're detecting some unusual readings from the Council ships. Their energy signatures are fluctuating in patterns we haven't seen before." "Explain." "It appears they're charging their weapon systems. Based on our analysis of their demonstration at the space station, they're preparing to fire antimatter streams at maximum power." Harrison felt a chill run down his spine. The Council wasn't planning to capture Earth. They intended to destroy it outright. No negotiations, no second chances, just complete annihilation. "Signal all civilian shelters," he ordered. "Tell them to implement maximum radiation shielding protocols, and get me Commander Chen at Earth Defense Station." Sarah Chen's face appeared on screen moments later. Behind her, Harrison could see the frantic activity of the defense station's bridge as they prepared for the impossible. "Sarah," Harrison said quietly, "they're not planning to capture the planet. Energy readings indicate they're preparing to glass the entire surface." Chen's expression hardened. "Understood, Admiral. All civilian populations are in deep shelters and our surface installations are prepared for the worst. How long do we have?" 3 hours until they reach effective firing range. Maybe less if they're willing to push their engines. "Then we'd better make those 3 hours count." Across the solar system, humanity's hidden defenses began revealing themselves. On Mars, what had appeared to be ordinary mining installations suddenly reconfigured into massive railgun batteries. The red planet's lower gravity allowed them to launch projectiles at velocities that would have been impossible on Earth. In the asteroid belt, mining platforms that had been quietly extracting resources for decades activated their secondary systems. Nuclear pulse engines designed for moving asteroids were repurposed into weapons capable of hurling mountain-sized rocks at relativistic speeds. Even the seemingly peaceful research stations throughout the outer planets had surprises waiting. Europa Station's ice mining equipment became a launcher for frozen projectiles that would hit like meteors. Titan Station's atmospheric processors were converted into generators for electromagnetic pulse weapons. But the real surprise was hidden in Earth's moon. "Dr. Vasquez to Admiral Harrison," came a transmission from Luna Base. "The zero-point manipulation array is ready for first activation. I must warn you, Admiral, we've only run computer simulations. We have no idea what the actual effects will be." Dr. Elena Vasquez had become humanity's most important scientist almost by accident. Her research into faster-than-light travel had led to the discovery that reality itself could be manipulated at the quantum level. By amplifying the tiny fluctuations in spacetime that occurred naturally throughout the universe, humans could theoretically control the fundamental forces of nature. The math was sound, and the small-scale tests had been promising, but they had never tried to use zero-point manipulation on anything larger than a laboratory sample. "Doctor," Harrison replied, "we're about to face weapons that can destroy planets. I'm willing to try anything that might give us an edge." "Understood, Admiral. Luna Base is ready to begin the first phase on your command." 2 hours remained until the Council fleet reached Mars orbit. Harrison gathered his senior staff for final battle preparations. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "in about 2 hours we're going to face technology that's thousands of years ahead of ours. By every logical measure, we should surrender now and save ourselves the trouble of dying." Captain Myers spoke up first. "Sir, with respect, humans have never been particularly logical when it comes to fighting for our freedom." "Exactly right, Captain. Our enemy expects us to break and run when we see their true power. They don't understand that humans have a long tradition of doing impossible things when our backs are against the wall." Harrison pulled up a holographic display showing both fleets. The Council ships moved in perfect formation, each one a masterwork of engineering that represented the pinnacle of their civilization's achievement. The human ships looked crude and primitive in comparison, but they moved with the unpredictable energy of beings who had nothing left to lose. "Our strategy is simple," Harrison continued. "We hit them hard, fast, and from directions they're not expecting. Mars will open with a full railgun barrage targeting their lead ships. The asteroid platforms will follow up with kinetic bombardment. Once they're dealing with that, we activate the ZPM array and see if human ingenuity can overcome alien technology." Lieutenant Torres raised her hand. Sir, what if the zero-point manipulation doesn't work as intended? Then we improvise, Lieutenant. It's what humans do best. Meanwhile, aboard the Council flagship Eternal Dominance, Fleet Commander HFY reviewed the approaching battle with satisfaction. The human military appeared to be positioning itself between the fleet and their homeworld, exactly what he had expected from such a primitive species. Status report, he ordered in the clicking language of his people. All ships report ready for final assault, replied his tactical officer. Long-range scans show 57 human vessels, largest vessel approximately 800 meters. No significant energy signatures detected. HFY's compound eyes gleamed with amusement. They actually intend to fight us with those toys? How remarkably stupid of them. The Vorthak commander turned to address his bridge crew. Prepare antimatter cannon for planetary bombardment. Once we destroy their pathetic fleet, we will demonstrate to any survivors why resistance to the Council is futile. What HFY didn't know was that human intelligence had been monitoring Council communications for months. Earth's linguists had cracked several alien languages, and every transmission from the approaching fleet was being analyzed and decoded. Commander Chen read the latest intelligence report with growing alarm. They're not just planning to defeat us, she told her staff. They intend to make an example of Earth, complete extermination, recorded and broadcast to every species in their territory. All the more reason to make sure they don't succeed, replied Lieutenant Rodriguez grimly. Signal from Mars Defense Command, announced Kim. General Morrison reports all railgun batteries are charged and ready, targeting solutions locked on the lead Council ships. Chen looked around the bridge at her crew. These people had volunteered to stand between Earth and annihilation, knowing they would probably die in the attempt. But their faces showed determination, not fear. Open a channel to all human forces, Chen ordered. This is Commander Sarah Chen at Earth Defense Station. In 1 hour, the most important battle in human history will begin. The enemy expects us to surrender or run. They don't understand that humans have been fighting impossible battles since we first learned to make tools. She paused, thinking of all the generations that had brought humanity to this moment. Our ancestors faced ice ages with nothing but animal skins and fire. They crossed oceans in wooden boats to find new worlds. They survived plagues that killed half their populations. They fought wars against overwhelming odds and kept going when any rational species would have given up. Throughout the solar system, millions of humans listened to her words. Soldiers checking their weapons one last time. Engineers making final adjustments to untested technologies. Civilians huddled in shelters, hoping their defenders could work another impossible miracle. Today, we carry on that tradition. We fight not just for Earth, but for the right of every species to determine their own fate. We fight to prove that freedom is worth any price. And we fight to show this galaxy that humans don't break easily. The cheers that followed could be heard on every ship, every station, every colony where humans had made their home among the stars. 1 hour remaining. On Mars, General Morrison watched the Council fleet approach through his tactical display. The enemy ships were magnificent in their terrifying beauty, crystalline structures that seemed to bend light around them, moving through space with the grace of living beings. Range to target, he asked his artillery commander. 18 minutes to optimal firing range, sir. All batteries report ready. Morrison nodded. Mars had been humanity's first true colony world, a harsh and unforgiving environment that had taught its residents the value of stubborn persistence. If Earth fell, Mars would become humanity's last stronghold. But Morrison didn't intend to let it come to that. Signal Luna Base, he ordered. Tell Dr. Vasquez we'll begin the party in 15 minutes. I hope her new physics are ready for field testing. Deep beneath the lunar surface, Dr. Vasquez made final preparations for humanity's most desperate gambit. The zero-point manipulation array stretched throughout the moon's interior, a network of quantum processors and space-time manipulation devices that represented the bleeding edge of human science. All nodes report optimal synchronization, announced her assistant, Dr. Kim. Quantum field generators are online and stable. Power levels at maximum safe parameters, though I should point out that we're about to exceed safe parameters by several orders of magnitude. Dr. Vasquez smiled grimly. Doctor, we stopped worrying about safety the moment 57 alien warships decided to exterminate our species. Begin final startup sequence. The array hummed to life with power that seemed to make reality itself vibrate. For the first time in human history, they were about to reach into the fundamental structure of the universe and bend it to their will. 10 minutes remaining. Admiral Harrison stood at the center of his bridge, watching the tactical display as both fleets approached their moment of destiny. The Council ships moved with mechanical precision, confident in their overwhelming superiority. The human ships spread out in a defensive formation that looked almost random to alien eyes, but followed tactics developed over thousands of years of human warfare. "All ships report ready, Admiral," announced Captain Myers. "Weapons charged, engines at maximum efficiency, crews at battle stations." "Mars Defense is standing by," added Communications Officer Park. "Luna Base reports the ZPM array is fully operational." Harrison took a deep breath. In a few minutes, they would discover whether human determination could overcome impossible odds one more time. "Open a fleet-wide channel," he ordered. When the connection was established, Harrison's voice carried to every human ship preparing for battle. "This is Admiral Harrison. Today, we face an enemy that believes might makes right, that superior technology grants them the right to enslave entire civilizations. They're about to learn that humans have spent our entire history proving that assumptions like that can be fatal." He looked out at the approaching alien fleet, beautiful and terrible in their alien majesty. "In 5 minutes, we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity's children. We show them why humans have earned our place among the stars. We show them why even advanced civilizations should think twice before declaring war on a species that refuses to stay down." The communication ended in silence. 5 minutes to contact. 5 minutes to discover whether humanity would survive to see another sunrise. The battle for Earth was about to begin. The first shot of humanity's last stand came not from Earth's mighty warships, but from the red sands of Mars. General Morrison watched his tactical display as the Council fleet entered optimal range. 57 alien warships, each one a floating city of death, moved toward Earth with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. "Fire," Morrison ordered quietly. Mars erupted in thunder. 50 massive railgun batteries, hidden beneath the planet's surface for months, fired simultaneously. Tungsten projectiles the size of school buses accelerated to 15% of light speed, their passage through space creating brief flashes like miniature supernovas. The Council fleet, supremely confident in their technological superiority, had not bothered to raise their shields. That mistake cost them 3 ships. The tungsten rounds punched through alien hulls like bullets through paper, their kinetic energy vaporizing everything they touched. 3 of the magnificent Council warships simply ceased to exist, transformed into expanding clouds of superheated gas and twisted metal. Aboard the Council flagship, Fleet Commander HFY watched in shock as 3 green dots vanished from his tactical display. "What happened?" he demanded in his clicking language. "Direct kinetic impacts, Commander," replied his weapons officer, her voice shaking with disbelief. "The humans somehow accelerated solid projectiles to relativistic speeds." "Impossible. Their technology level suggests they should barely have achieved chemical rockets." "Nevertheless, Commander, we have lost 3 ships." HFY's compound eyes narrowed with rage. The humans had drawn first blood through trickery and primitive cunning. It was an insult that demanded immediate response. "All ships raise shields to maximum. Target the 3rd planet and prepare for planetary bombardment. We will make these primitives regret their presumption." But humanity wasn't finished with its opening surprise. In the asteroid belt, mining platforms that had disguised themselves as simple resource extraction facilities revealed their true nature. Massive nuclear pulse engines, designed to move asteroids for mining operations, instead began launching them toward the Council fleet. Captain Rodriguez, commanding the converted mining platform Determination, watched her sensors as dozens of house-sized rocks accelerated toward the alien ships. "Time to impact, 18 minutes, she reported to her crew. "These aren't precision weapons, people. We're literally throwing rocks at spaceships. But sometimes the simple solutions are the best ones." The Council fleet detected the incoming asteroids and began defensive maneuvers. But they were facing a problem no advanced civilization had dealt with in millennia, truly primitive weapons used on a massive scale. Their energy shields were designed to deflect plasma bolts and antimatter streams. They could absorb the impact of sophisticated missiles and redirect laser strikes. But dealing with hundreds of chunks of rock moving at significant fractions of light speed, that required different tactics. Evasive maneuvers, ordered Zexai as his tactical officer tracked the incoming bombardment. And return fire, destroy those platforms immediately. The Council ships began firing, their antimatter cannons turning space into a light show of destruction. Several asteroid platforms vanished in flashes of brilliant energy, but others continued launching their primitive bombardment. Admiral Harrison, watching from the bridge of the Defiance, allowed himself a grim smile. Phase 1 is working, he told his crew. They're angry, they're off balance, and they're focused on the wrong targets. Signaled Dr. Vasquez it's time for Phase 2. Deep beneath Luna's surface, Dr. Vasquez received the signal and placed her hand on the activation control. Around her, the zero-point manipulation array hummed with power that seemed to make reality itself vibrate. Beginning quantum field manipulation, she announced to her team. Target, Council flagship. Let's see if we can rewrite the laws of physics around their position. The array activated with a sound like reality tearing. Aboard the Eternal Dominance, Fleet Commander Zexai was coordinating his fleet's response to the human attacks when something impossible happened. The laws of physics around his ship began to change. First, gravity fluctuated wildly. The ship's artificial gravity systems, designed to maintain perfect stability in any conditions, began failing as local spacetime twisted in ways that violated everything the Vorthak understood about the universe. "Commander," called his navigation officer in panic, "our engines are showing impossible readings. The quantum foam density around our position has increased by 400%. "That's impossible," Zexai snapped. "Nothing can alter the quantum foam density." "Nevertheless, sir, our faster-than-light drive is offline. We cannot engage quantum tunneling in this environment." Then the real surprises began. The zero-point manipulation array wasn't just altering physics around the Council ships. It was creating localized zones where the fundamental constants of reality worked differently. In some areas, the strong nuclear force became weaker, causing matter to become unstable. In others, electromagnetic fields behaved in ways that made energy weapons unreliable. Dr. Vasquez watched her readings with a mixture of excitement and terror. "It's working," she breathed. "We're actually manipulating the basic structure of spacetime, but the power requirements are enormous. We can only maintain this for maybe 20 minutes before we burn out every quantum processor in the array." "Then we better make those 20 minutes count," replied Admiral Harrison's voice through the communication system. The Council fleet found itself fighting in an environment where their advanced technology was more hindrance than help. Ships that had relied on exotic matter drives suddenly discovered that exotic matter was behaving differently. Energy weapons that should have vaporized targets instead produced unpredictable effects. But the aliens were far from helpless. "All ships," ordered Zexai, "switch to kinetic weaponry. These humans want to play with primitive physics. We'll show them that sometimes the old ways work best." The Council ships began firing solid projectiles, simple chunks of dense metal accelerated to tremendous speeds by magnetic launchers. These weapons were less sophisticated than their antimatter cannons, but they worked regardless of what the humans were doing to local spacetime. Admiral Harrison watched as several of his ships took devastating hits. The human fleet was fast and maneuverable, but they couldn't take much damage. Each Council ship was a fortress. Each human ship was made of determination and hope. "Signal all ships," Harrison ordered. "Execute attack pattern Delta. Time to show them what humans learned in a few thousand years of killing each other." The human fleet abandoned its defensive formation and scattered in all directions, each ship following seemingly random vectors that made no sense to alien tactical computers. But Admiral Harrison had studied every war in human history, from ancient battles fought with bronze swords to the resource conflicts that had raged throughout the 21st century. Humans had learned something that advanced civilizations had forgotten. Sometimes chaos was the best strategy. Captain Sarah Mills, commanding the destroyer Relentless, dove her ship toward the Council flagship at an angle that made her crew grab for handholds. "Ma'am," called her navigator, "that approach vector will take us directly through their main firing arc." "Exactly," Mills replied grimly. "They expect us to avoid their weapons. They don't expect us to charge straight at them." The Relentless screamed toward the Eternal Dominance like a missile, firing everything it had. Plasma bolts and kinetic rounds hammered against the alien ship's shields, while point defense systems tried desperately to track the tiny human vessel. At the last possible moment, Mills pulled her ship into a violent turn that would have killed her crew if not for their inertial compensators. The Relentless skimmed along the Council flagship's hull, its weapons tearing into sensor arrays and communication equipment before disappearing back into space. "Damage report," demanded Zexai as his ship shuddered from the human attack. "Minor hull damage, but they've destroyed our primary communication array," his tactical officer reported. "We're having difficulty coordinating with the fleet." It was a small victory, but it demonstrated something important. The human ships were fast enough and crazy enough to get through Council defenses. All across the battle zone, human captains were pulling similar maneuvers. They couldn't match alien firepower, but they could be unpredictable. They dove through asteroid fields that Council computers deemed impassable. They fired while spinning end-over-end in maneuvers that made their crews sick. They used every dirty trick that thousands of years of human warfare had developed. And it was working. "We've lost 8 ships," Zexai's tactical officer reported. "But the humans have lost 23. Our superior firepower is telling." Zexai studied the tactical display with growing frustration. Yes, they were inflicting more damage than they received, but the humans kept fighting with an intensity that made no logical sense. By all reasonable calculations, they should have surrendered after losing half their fleet. Instead, they seemed to be fighting harder. Commander Chen, watching from Earth Defense Station, felt her heart break as she watched green dots representing human ships vanish from her tactical display. Each one represented hundreds of brave souls who had volunteered to stand between Earth and extinction. But she also felt something else, pride. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," she called. "Signal from Admiral Harrison. He's requesting permission to implement Plan Gamma." Rodriguez looked up from his console with surprise. Plan Gamma was their most desperate option, essentially a suicide run designed to take as many Council ships as possible down with them. "Tell the Admiral that Earth approves Plan Gamma," Chen replied quietly. "And tell him that humanity will remember what he and his people do in the next 10 minutes. Admiral Harrison received the authorization and gathered his surviving ships around the Defiance. Of the 57 vessels that had started the battle, only 19 remained operational, but their crews were still ready to fight. "All ships, this is Admiral Harrison," he broadcast. "We've bloodied their nose, but they're still strong enough to destroy Earth. It's time to show them that humans don't give up, even when defeat is certain." He paused, looking around his bridge at officers who had become family over months of preparation. "We're going to ram the flagship. All ships, lock onto the Eternal Dominance and follow me in. If we can't win this battle, we'll make sure it costs them so much that every alien species in the galaxy will think twice before threatening human worlds." Captain Myers looked up from his station. "Sir, that's certain death for all of us." Harrison smiled grimly. "Captain, we're defending our home against impossible odds. Death was always on the table. The question is whether we make it meaningful." The surviving human ships began their final charge toward the Council flagship. They had no chance of survival, but they had something more important: the absolute determination to make their enemy pay for every meter of space between them and Earth. But as the human fleet began its desperate assault, something unexpected happened. Dr. Vasquez, monitoring the zero-point manipulation array from Luna Base, detected massive energy readings from beyond the solar system. "Admiral Harrison," she transmitted urgently, "I'm reading multiple faster-than-light signatures approaching from the outer system. Unknown vessels, but they're not using Council technology." The tactical displays throughout the human fleet suddenly filled with new contacts. Ship after ship emerged from faster-than-light travel, their energy signatures completely unfamiliar. And they immediately began firing on the Council fleet. Zexai watched in horror as his tactical display filled with hostile contacts. "Where did they come from?" he demanded. Unknown, Commander. These ships are using technology we don't recognize. Their weapons appear to be based on controlled gravity manipulation. The new arrivals weren't using energy weapons or kinetic bombardment. Instead, they were creating localized gravity fields that crushed Council ships like tin cans. It was a technology that the Galactic Council had never encountered before. All ships, Zexai ordered desperately, disengage from the humans and target the new arrivals. We need to identify this threat immediately. But the battle had taken a turn that no one had expected. Admiral Harrison stared at his tactical display in amazement. Who the hell are they? He wondered aloud. The answer came in the form of a transmission on frequencies that human technology could barely detect. When the translation computers finally decoded the message, it sent shockwaves through every ship in the human fleet. Human vessels, this is Fleet Commander Tikon of the Liberation Front. We have been monitoring your species for some time. Your refusal to surrender to Council tyranny has inspired resistance movements throughout their territory. Today, we fight together. Commander Chen felt tears streaming down her face as she watched the battle turn in humanity's favor. Earth had not stood alone after all. Somewhere in the galaxy, other species had been watching, waiting for someone to prove that the Council could be defied. And humanity had just shown them that it was possible. The galaxy was about to discover that the human march to war had awakened something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined: hope. Fleet Commander Tikon of the Liberation Front watched the battle unfold through compound eyes that had seen too much suffering across the galaxy. His species, the Korathi, had been among the first to be pacified by the Galactic Council 3 centuries ago. They had learned to fight from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike back. That moment had come when they detected humanity's impossible defiance. "Status report," Tikon ordered in the musical tones of his people's language. 37 Council ships remaining operational," replied his tactical officer. "The humans have been reduced to 12 vessels, but they continue to fight with remarkable tenacity. Their primitive weapons are actually proving effective against Council shields." Tikon's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his people. Primitive. These humans are using zero-point manipulation technology. They've accomplished in decades what took most species millennia to develop. The Liberation Front fleet consisted of ships from a dozen different species that had suffered under Council rule. The sleek vessels of the Velter, who had mastered gravity manipulation. The bioships of the Zephyrians, grown rather than built, that could repair themselves in battle. The crystalline constructs of the Resonance Collective, whose ships existed partially in higher dimensions. All united by a single purpose: to end the Galactic Council's reign of terror. But it was the human ships that drew Tikon's attention. Even outnumbered and outgunned, they fought with a fury that reminded him why the Liberation Front had come to help. These weren't just warriors defending their territory. They were a people refusing to surrender their freedom no matter the cost. "Signal the human fleet," Tikon ordered. "Tell them we'll handle the remaining Council ships. They've done enough dying for one day." Admiral Harrison received the transmission with mixed emotions. Part of him was grateful for the intervention that had saved Earth. But another part of him, the part that had spent 40 years learning to never back down from a fight, wasn't ready to let others finish what humanity had started. "With respect, Fleet Commander Tikon," Harrison replied. "These bastards came to destroy our world. We'd like to help you send them home in pieces." Tikon's laughter translated as a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I understand completely, Admiral. Very well, we fight together. But know that your species has already accomplished something remarkable today. You've proven that the Council can be defeated. That knowledge will spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire." The combined Human and Liberation Front fleet began their assault on the remaining Council ships. What followed was unlike any battle the galaxy had ever seen. The Liberation Front ships used technologies that seemed like magic to human observers. Velter vessels created gravity wells that crushed enemy hulls. Zephyrian bioships literally ate through Council armor with acidic secretions. The Resonance Collective's crystalline constructs phased in and out of normal space, appearing inside enemy ships to destroy them from within. But it was the human tactics that turned the battle from a victory into a rout. Captain Mills, commanding the badly damaged destroyer Relentless, had an idea that was either brilliant or insane. Navigation. she called to her crew. "Plot a course through that gravity field the Velter ship just created. I want to use their weapon as a slingshot." "Ma'am," replied her navigator nervously, "those gravity fields are designed to crush ships if we get the trajectory wrong." "Then we'll die," Mills said simply. "But if we get it right, we'll hit that council cruiser with more kinetic energy than our engines could ever generate." The Relentless dove into the artificial gravity well, its hull creaking under stresses it was never designed to handle. But Mills had calculated correctly. The ship whipped around the gravity field like a stone from a slingshot and slammed into the council cruiser at impossible velocity. Both ships were destroyed in the impact, but the maneuver was so audacious that it stunned even the experienced Liberation Front commanders. "Did that human ship just use our gravity weapon to turn itself into a missile?" asked Ticon's tactical officer in amazement. "Yes," Ticon replied thoughtfully, "and they succeeded in destroying a ship 3 times their size. Remind me never to underestimate human creativity." Aboard the Council flagship Eternal Dominance, Fleet Commander HFY was facing the collapse of everything he had believed about galactic civilization. The Council was supposed to be invincible. Their technology was supposed to be supreme. Lesser species were supposed to submit to their obvious superiority. Instead, a primitive species from a backwater solar system had not only defied them, but had somehow inspired a galaxy-wide rebellion. "Commander," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender demands from the Liberation Front. They're offering to accept our unconditional surrender and guarantee the safety of our crews." HFY's compound eyes blazed with fury. "Surrender? To primitives and rebels? Never. All ships prepare to ram the nearest enemy vessels. If we're going to die, we'll take as many of them with us as possible." But his orders never reached the rest of his fleet. Dr. Vasquez, monitoring the battle from Luna Base, had been studying the quantum signatures of the Council ships throughout the fight. The zero-point manipulation array had given her insights into how their technology worked, and she had discovered something interesting. "Admiral Harrison," she transmitted, "I can shut down their communication systems entirely. Their quantum entanglement communication network is vulnerable to ZPM interference. Give me 30 seconds." The Luna Base array hummed with power as it reached into the quantum foam around the Council ships and severed their instantaneous communication links. Suddenly, the remaining Council vessels found themselves isolated, cut off from their flagship's orders. And without central coordination, they began to surrender. One by one, the remaining Council ships powered down their weapons and transmitted surrender signals. Their crews, trained to follow orders from their superiors, found themselves adrift when those orders stopped coming. Only the flagship continued to fight. HFY stood alone on his bridge as his crew abandoned their stations. The other Council species had never shared the Vorthak dedication to absolute victory. Faced with certain death, they chose survival over honor. "Cowards," HFY hissed as he manually activated the flagship's self-destruct sequence. "If we cannot win, then I will ensure the humans gain nothing from their victory." But Admiral Harrison had one last surprise waiting. "Dr. Vasquez," he transmitted urgently, "can you use the ZPM array to contain the explosion from their self-destruct?" "Theoretically, yes, but I'd have to create a localized spacetime distortion powerful enough to bend reality into a closed loop. The energy requirements would be—" She paused, running quick calculations. "Actually, it might work, but if I'm wrong, the explosion could tear a hole in spacetime itself." "Do it." The zero-point manipulation array reached out across space and wrapped the flagship in a bubble of twisted reality just as its antimatter cores went critical. The explosion that should have vaporized everything within a light-minute radius instead collapsed inward on itself, contained within a pocket of spacetime that folded back on itself like origami made of pure energy. When the distortion cleared, the flagship was simply gone. Not destroyed, gone, as if it had never existed at all. The battle for Earth was over. But the war for the galaxy had just begun. In the hours that followed, Admiral Harrison found himself aboard the Liberation Front flagship Defiant Hope, meeting with Fleet Commander Ticon and representatives of a dozen species he had never known existed. "Your species has accomplished something remarkable today," Ticon explained through his translation device. "For 3 centuries, The Galactic Council has maintained control through fear and superior technology. They convinced every species in the galaxy that resistance was futile. T-Con gestured to the holographic display showing the solar system, where human and Liberation Front ships were working together to secure the surrendered Council vessels. But you proved that technology alone doesn't guarantee victory. Your people fought with something the Council hasn't encountered in generations: the absolute refusal to surrender. That example has already inspired resistance movements on a dozen worlds. Admiral Harrison looked around the conference room at the faces of beings from across the galaxy. Each represented a species that had suffered under Council rule, that had waited for someone to prove that freedom was worth fighting for. "What happens now?" Harrison asked. A new voice answered, smooth and melodic, coming from a being that looked like a living crystal formation. "Now we teach the galaxy what you humans have known all along, that freedom cannot be given by others. It must be taken by those brave enough to fight for it." The speaker was Resonance Prime, leader of the collective. "We have been monitoring Council communications throughout their territory. News of today's battle is spreading faster than they can suppress it. Worlds that have been enslaved for centuries are beginning to remember what independence means." T-Con activated a galactic map that showed the extent of Council territory, thousands of star systems under their direct control, with millions more paying tribute to avoid destruction. "The Liberation Front has been building our strength for decades," T-Con explained. "But we lacked something essential, proof that the Council could be defeated. Today, 13 human ships and the crew of a mining station accomplished what we thought would require centuries of careful preparation." Harrison studied the map, noting the locations of Council strongholds and the positions of Liberation Front forces. It was clear that humanity had stumbled into the middle of a conflict that spanned the entire galaxy. "You're asking us to join your war," Harrison said quietly. "We're asking you to continue what you started today," replied another voice. This one came from a being that looked remarkably human except for the gills along her neck and the scaled patches on her skin. "My people, the Aquarians, were conquered 200 years ago. Our children grow up as slaves on worlds we once called home. Today, for the first time in 2 centuries, they have hope that things can change." Admiral Harrison thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who had narrowly escaped extinction. They had survived one battle, but the galaxy was full of enemies who would never forgive humanity for defying the established order. "If we join your Liberation Front," Harrison asked, "what are we really signing up for?" T-Con's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "A war that will last generations, battles against enemies with technology we can barely comprehend, the constant risk that one mistake will result in the complete destruction of your homeworld." He paused, studying the human admiral's expression. "But also the chance to ensure that no species ever again has to face what your people faced today. The opportunity to build a galaxy where freedom is not a privilege granted by the powerful, but a right defended by the brave." Harrison looked around the conference room one more time. These beings had risked everything to help a species they had never met, simply because humanity had shown the courage to fight back. "Admiral," came a transmission from Earth. President Williams appeared on the holographic display, along with the leaders of every major nation. "We've been monitoring your discussions. Earth's government has reached a decision." Williams looked directly at the Liberation Front representatives. 3 hours ago, these beings saved our world from destruction. Today, we learned that the galaxy is full of species suffering under the same tyranny that threatened us. As representatives of the human race, we formally request membership in the Liberation Front." The reaction around the conference room was immediate. Species that had fought alone for centuries suddenly realized they had gained an ally whose determination had already proven itself in battle. But T-Con raised a warning mandible. "President Williams, you should understand what you're agreeing to. The Council will never forgive what happened here today. They will return with larger fleets, more powerful weapons, and the absolute determination to make an example of Earth. Are you prepared for a war that may last longer than your civilization has existed?" Williams looked around at his fellow world leaders, then back at the Liberation Front commanders. "Commander T-Con, 6 hours ago we were facing extinction as slaves. Now we have a chance to help free an entire galaxy. As far as we're concerned, that's not even a choice." The conference room fell silent as representatives of dozens of species absorbed what they had just heard. For the first time in centuries, they weren't just fighting to survive, they were fighting to win. And they had just gained an ally that had proven it would rather die free than live in chains. Fleet Commander Tikon stood and extended his hand in the human gesture he had learned from monitoring Earth's communications. "Welcome to the Liberation Front, Admiral Harrison. Welcome to the war for galactic freedom." As Admiral Harrison shook the alien commander's hand, he realized that humanity's march to war had accomplished something even more important than saving Earth. It had awakened a sleeping galaxy and reminded every oppressed species that freedom was worth any price. The stars themselves were about to learn why they should shake in fear when free beings decided to fight back. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the galaxy was burning. Admiral Harrison stood in the command center of New Hope Station, humanity's first joint military facility with the Liberation Front, watching tactical displays that showed the scope of the galactic civil war they had helped ignite. Red indicators marked Council strongholds under siege. Blue showed Liberation Front victories. Yellow indicated worlds in open rebellion. The map was mostly yellow. "Status report from the Andorian sector," announced Captain Rodriguez, now serving as Harrison's intelligence coordinator. "The Velter Third Fleet has successfully liberated the mining colonies around. Local resistance forces are reporting that Council garrison troops are surrendering rather than fighting." Harrison nodded grimly. It was a pattern they'd seen across the galaxy. The Council's forces were discovering that their technological superiority meant nothing when facing enemies who refused to give up. The example humanity had set at Earth was spreading like wildfire. "What about the Vorthak home systems?" Harrison asked. "Still heavily defended, but intelligence suggests they're pulling forces back from frontier worlds to protect their core territories. The psychological impact of losing their invincible fleet at Earth is causing them to question every assumption about their military superiority." Commander Chen's voice came through the communication system from Earth's surface. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from Fleet Commander Tikon. He's requesting an emergency conference with all Liberation Front leadership." Harrison activated the holographic display, and Tikon's familiar insected features appeared, along with representatives from the dozen other species that formed the Liberation Front's core leadership. "Admiral Harrison," Tikon began without preamble, "we have a problem. Our intelligence networks have intercepted Council communications indicating they're planning something called Final Protocol. We believe they're preparing to use weapons that could sterilize entire star systems." Resonance Prime's crystalline form shimmered with agitation. "Our analysis of the intercepted data suggests they're planning to make examples of rebellious worlds by destroying them completely. Not conquest, annihilation." The Aquarian representative, Admiral Kylan, spoke next. "They're targeting systems with the highest concentration of resistance activity. Earth is at the top of their list, followed by the Korathi home worlds and New Velter." Harrison felt a chill run through him. The Council was preparing to use genocide as a weapon of terror, betting that the fear of total extinction would force rebellious worlds to surrender. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Based on their fleet movements and the energy signatures we're detecting from their deep space facilities, perhaps 3 weeks," Tikon replied. "They're assembling something enormous at their primary shipyard in the Nexus system." Dr. Vasquez's voice joined the conference from Luna Base. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the quantum signatures from those intercepted communications. Whatever they're building, it's using technologies that go beyond anything we've seen from them before. The power requirements suggest they're tapping directly into stellar cores." The implications hit Harrison like a physical blow, star-killing weapons. The Council was preparing to murder entire civilizations to maintain their grip on power. "We need to stop them," Harrison said flatly. "Whatever it takes, we cannot allow them to complete this project." "Agreed," Tikon replied. "But the Nexus system is the most heavily defended location in Council territory. 27 capital ships, orbital defense platforms that could destroy fleets and weapons we haven't encountered before. A direct assault would be suicide." Harrison looked around at the holographic representations of the Liberation Front leadership, beings from a dozen different species. each representing worlds that had suffered under Council oppression. They had come so far in 6 months, but now they faced the possibility that their rebellion would end with the extermination of every world that had dared to resist. "There might be another way," Harrison said slowly. "Dr. Vasquez, how large could we make a zero-point manipulation field?" "Theoretically, with enough quantum processors and sufficient power, we could affect an entire star system. But the energy requirements would be—" She paused, running calculations. "We'd need the combined power output of multiple stars." "What if we used the Liberation Front's combined fleets as mobile quantum processors?" Harrison asked. "Every ship we have, working together as a single massive array." Ticon's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "You're suggesting we turn our entire fleet into one enormous weapon." "Not a weapon," Harrison corrected. "A tool. If we can manipulate spacetime on a large enough scale, we don't need to destroy the Council facility, we can isolate it. Cut it off from normal space entirely." Resonance Prime's crystalline form pulsed with excitement. "A spatial displacement field large enough to encompass an entire star system. Elegant, but the coordination required would be unprecedented. Every ship would need to synchronize its quantum field generators to within nanoseconds." "It's never been tried on this scale," Dr. Vasquez warned. "If the field collapses, the feedback could destroy every ship in the fleet. And if we're wrong about the field dynamics, we could accidentally tear a hole in spacetime that makes the entire galaxy uninhabitable." Admiral Kylan's scaled features showed grim determination. "And if we do nothing, the Council will use Starkillers to murder billions of innocent civilians. I think the choice is clear." Over the next 2 weeks, the Liberation Front assembled the largest fleet in galactic history. Ships from dozens of species converged on the staging area at the edge of Council territory, each one equipped with specially modified quantum field generators based on human zero-point manipulation technology. The combined fleet numbered over 3,000 vessels, everything from massive Korathi battleships to tiny Zephyrian biofighters. Each ship had been equipped with quantum processors that could synchronize with the others to create a field capable of affecting an entire star system. Admiral Harrison stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned flagship Unity, a ship built using combined technologies from every species in the Liberation Front. Around him, officers from a dozen different worlds worked together with the easy cooperation of people who had learned to trust each other in battle. "Final systems check," Harrison announced. "Dr. Vasquez, are all quantum processors online?" "Affirmative, Admiral. All 3,217 ships report full synchronization. Quantum field generators are stable and ready for activation." "Fleet status?" Captain Myers, now serving as Fleet Operations Coordinator, looked up from his displays. "All ships report battle ready. The Council garrison fleet at Nexus System consists of 43 capital ships and over 200 support vessels. We're outnumbered in terms of individual ship firepower, but they've never faced a coordinated assault of this magnitude." "Intelligence update." Rodriguez activated a holographic display showing the Nexus System. "The Council's Starkiller project appears to be nearing completion. Long-range scans show massive energy buildups around what appears to be a weapons platform the size of a small moon. If our analysis is correct, they're planning to test-fire it within the next 48 hours. "Probable target for the test?" "Earth," Rodriguez replied quietly. The bridge fell silent. After everything they had accomplished, everything they had sacrificed, it might all come down to whether they could stop a weapon designed to murder their entire homeworld. "All ships," Harrison announced over the fleet communication system. "This is Admiral Harrison. In 6 hours, we're going to attempt something that's never been tried in galactic history. We're going to use our combined fleet as a single weapon to isolate an entire star system." He paused, looking around the bridge at officers who had become family over months of desperate fighting. "The enemy we're facing today represents everything we've been fighting against. They're preparing to use genocide as a tool of terror, betting that the fear of extinction will force free beings back into slavery. We're here to prove them wrong." Throughout the fleet, crews from dozens of species listened to the human admiral's words. They had learned to trust his tactical judgment, but more importantly, they had learned to trust his absolute refusal to surrender when freedom was at stake. 6 months ago, humanity faced extinction and chose to fight rather than submit. Today, we all face that same choice. We can retreat and watch as the Council murders entire civilizations to maintain their power, or we can stand together and prove that free beings cannot be intimidated into slavery. The response from 3,000 ships was immediate and overwhelming, a cheer in dozens of different languages that roughly translated to the same thing. Let's finish this. The Liberation Front fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Nexus system and immediately came under attack from Council defense platforms. Energy beams that could vaporize planets lanced out toward the approaching fleet, only to be absorbed by defensive fields generated by hundreds of ships working in perfect coordination. "Council fleet is moving to intercept," announced the tactical officer. 43 capital ships approaching in battle formation. "Signal all ships," Harrison ordered. "Begin quantum field generation. Target the entire inner system including their weapons platform." Across the Liberation Front fleet, quantum field generators hummed to life with power that made reality itself tremble. 3,000 ships, each one a node in a vast array designed to manipulate the fundamental structure of spacetime. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Around the Council's Starkiller platform, space itself began to twist and fold. The laws of physics that govern the inner Nexus system started changing as the Liberation Front fleet reached into the quantum foam and rewrote the rules of reality. "Their faster-than-light drives are offline," reported Dr. Vasquez from her control station. "Quantum tunneling is impossible in the modified spacetime we've created around them." "Energy weapons are showing irregular behavior," added the tactical officer. "Their antimatter cannons are firing, but the exotic matter is behaving unpredictably in the altered physics environment." Admiral Harrison watched the tactical display as the entire inner Nexus system became isolated from normal space. The Council's mighty fleet found itself trapped in a bubble of reality where their advanced technology was useless. "Phase 2, Harrison announced. "Begin spatial displacement." The real test came next. The Liberation Front fleet began moving the entire inner system, stars, planets, weapons platforms, and all, into a pocket dimension where it could never threaten anyone again. It was like watching gods play with toy blocks the size of solar systems. The process took 3 hours. When it was complete, the inner Nexus system had simply ceased to exist in normal space. The Council's Starkiller weapon, their most heavily defended facility, and their most powerful fleet had been removed from the universe entirely. But the real victory came in the aftermath. Throughout Council territory, news of what had happened at Nexus spread faster than the Council could suppress it. Entire star systems that had been loyal to the Council for centuries suddenly realized that the Liberation Front possessed technologies that could make their oppressors simply disappear. Within days, Council governors were fleeing their posts as local populations rose in rebellion. Military units that had enforced Council rule for generations found themselves facing enemies who were no longer afraid of superior technology. 6 months later, Admiral Harrison stood once again on the observation deck of Earth Defense Station, but this time he was watching ships from dozens of species coming and going in peaceful commerce. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Galactic Council still existed, but they had been reduced to governing a handful of core systems. Their vast empire had collapsed as world after world declared independence and joined the new Galactic Federation, an alliance based on cooperation rather than conquest. "Final report from the Transition Committee," announced Commander Chen as she joined Harrison at the observation window. "The last Council garrison has withdrawn from the outer territories. Over 800 star systems have joined the Federation, and more are applying for membership every day." Harrison nodded, watching a Korathi merchant ship dock alongside a human transport. 6 months ago, humanity hadn't even known aliens existed. Now they were part of a galactic community based on the principle that freedom was the birthright of every intelligent species. "What's our next assignment?" Harrison asked. Chen smiled. "Exploration, Admiral. The Federation Council has approved humanity's request to lead the first joint species expedition beyond the galactic rim. Apparently, they want to see what we find when we're not fighting for our lives." Harrison looked out at the stars that had once seemed so distant and hostile. The galaxy was still full of dangers and unknowns, but it was also full of allies who shared humanity's belief that freedom was worth any sacrifice. "Scheduled departure for next week," Harrison said. "Let's go see what else is out there." As the human-led expedition prepared for launch, beings throughout the galaxy told the story of how a single species had changed everything. How humans, facing impossible odds and certain extinction, had chosen to fight rather than surrender. How their refusal to accept slavery had awakened a sleeping galaxy and reminded every oppressed species that freedom could not be given, it had to be taken. The story spread to distant stars and remote worlds, carrying a simple message. When free beings stand together, even the stars themselves shake in fear. And in the depths of space, where new civilizations were just beginning to look up at the night sky and dream of reaching the stars, they learned that the galaxy was a place where courage mattered more than technology, where determination could overcome any obstacle, and where the word, impossible, was just an invitation for humans to prove it wrong. The march to war had ended. The age of galactic freedom had begun.